Grady Powell, host of Forged in Fire.
Kyle Mann.
I'm J. Warner Wallace.
Kira Davis.
It's Ben Adams.
Hey, this is Dave Baker.
Carrie Pomeroli.
This is Mike Reiner.
This is Ethan Nicole.
This is Leanne Morgan.
It's Graham Parker, the 5th GP, and this is why you should never.
How I got suckered in.
I'm so embarrassed that I'm here.
You're wasting your time. You got better things to do.
Never listen.
Those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate. I am Lucas Pinkard. I am the Reverend today, even though if you were to watch in between takes, you might not believe that. And here with me, as always, is my partner of crime, my very good friend, and a man who brought his mom to a Valentine's Day dinner whenever she was allowed a free weekend off of house arrest.
Yep.
It is the Reprobate Dan Gibson. What's going on, Big Dan?
Nothing. We had Hot
Big
Pockets.
Dan, what's up? You had Hot Pockets.
Yeah.
What flavor Hot Pocket do you typically go with?
Ham and cheese.
So you basically do.
I'm pretty sure there's a ham and cheese Hot Pocket.
You do like chicken cordon bleu Hot Pocket?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you look, you can't take chicken cordon bleu into a prison. They will take it from you forcefully.
Yeah?
Either the guards, because they don't want the inmates getting out of control. And if the inmates sniff some chicken cordon bleu, it's over. It's red alert. Someone's hitting the panic button, as we learned from Wentworth.
You know, you're saying this, and it's reminding me a little bit of that scene from Arrested Development where Jeffrey Tambor's like, I'm going to try something risky, and he just throws the ice cream sandwich and it hits Michael in the face. Yeah.
I'm having a love affair with this ice cream sandwich.
Today on our show,
Colton gets that now. He's watching Arrested Development, our
awesome.
producer.
Congratulations. And he's been watching it while him and his wife eat a night's meal of Philistine dog. And you'll find out what we mean by that in tonight's episode. So we have on Brannon Hollingsworth from Brainy Pixel and Yvonne Anaya from Mercy Way Studios. They've partnered together to do a comic book series called The Chronicles of Faith. They've got another one called Heaven's Hammer that's going to be coming out, which is sort of, it appears to be chronicling one of the...
Chronicles of Faith, David.
Yeah, David is where we start. Mm-hmm. Yep, and issue 0 is out right now.
With a real boring character.
Yeah. Somebody that's just super lame.
One that
nobody has any interest in. He's
ends
got
up
a bunch
becoming
of
the
mighty
king
men.
of Israel, and they tell the story in the fashion of How I Met Your Mother, where David is telling
Danley's
the story
fired.
to
So
Solomon. How I Met Your...
So terrible. That's the worst. They tell the story the way that every good father tells a story. Yeah. And that is like, here's the adventures that I had with my friend.
That's all How I Met Your Mother is. They're telling his children how he met his mother, and then she died.
Not how he met his mother. How he met their mother.
Their mother. Their collective mother. His collective.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate.
Start over. That was good stuff.
How I Met Your Mother. This show's boring.
Okay, so let's start the show.
But this interview is not. So Brannon and Yvonne from the Chronicles of Faith talked to us about creating David as a historical character, what it's like to create actual historical events in a modern context that is both representative of the Near Eastern culture in which they came from, but also is said in a way that it helps all of us and reflects what the beliefs of all of us are who have adhered to those stories for the last several centuries in a Western context, in the way that they impact us. We talked to him.
Kids still start out with slingshots.
Yeah, we talked to him a little bit about the book of Boba Fett, why Brannon's wrong specifically about Boba Fett, and how he said he would talk to George Lucas about it instead of Kathleen Kennedy because he doesn't know who produces the show. Mm-hmm. So
this is attention to detail that I appreciate.
It really is. Without further ado, here's probably one of the funniest and best interviews we've done in a long time. It is Brainy Pixel and Mercy Way Studios. Stay funky, bros. Hey, everybody. Today on these Airwaves Expo, we have from Mercy Way Studios, via the miracle of the internet, coming in from El Salvador, it is Yvonne. And our fan favorite from Middle Earth, it's the man from Brainy Pixel himself. It is Brannon Hollingsworth. So how are you gentlemen doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here again. Thanks for having me back on, guys.
And thank you for inviting me. This is my first time, but I feel like home already.
Well, that's
good.
That's good.
Make yourself at home, just like the dwarves did at
Bilbo's house.
Bilbo's house.
Yeah, blunt the knives and parry the forks.
Chip.
I don't know what they did. Chip the forks. They did something with them.
So they ate all his biscuits and cheese.
Yeah,
Brannon do the dishes. It's just I just need it.
Right.
that'll be perfect.
That's right.
So I need to ask you guys just right off the bat a really pressing question. And that is, we're going to start with Yvonne. Did Grogu make the right decision?
Oh, it's the decision that I want. He makes the decision that I want. Well, spoilers alert. I don't think a season 3 of that without Grogu.
Okay.
I
agree.
You would have if you were in the same place, you would have gone back with Mando instead of staying to train with the Jedi.
This is not going to be a Christian stuff, but I will take the shirt and I just steal the lightsaber. just saying, he steals the ball every time. So
Yep.
Yeah, you would have asked Luke, like, what are you going to do with it if I say no?
yeah,
No one else can wear it.
Yeah, that's. He's
Do you
gonna
have a
use it.
Cabbage Patch doll
Yeah,
you
he's-
can put this on?
He's gonna do puppet scenes for the next generation of Jedi.
Yeah.
Brannon, did Grogu make the right decision?
I'm assuming you guys are talking about Boba Fett.
Yes.
The Book of Boba Fett, is that right? So
Yes, it
I
is.
don't know because I watched the first episode and was so infuriated at what they did to my childhood hero that I've not watched any since.
You
So-
Specifically, what did they do?
Yeah. What did they do?
Well,
How did
so
they
first-
ruin
first of
Boba
all-
Fett from the 5 minutes he was on screen from your childhood with no backstory?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that, Boba Fett, the character, we got introduced to him basically with Vader,
Yeah.
right? Darth Vader basically warning Boba Fett no disintegrations, right? Just basically trying to back down this slavering dog, right? This,
Yeah, I remember
this,
that.
Yeah, if
this
Darth
bounty
Vader
hunter,
has
this
to tell
ruthless
you-
bounty hunter,
Yeah, I remember.
right?
Yeah.
And so that sets a tone for this character, right? And
Right.
so what we saw in the first episode of the Book of Boba Fett was like that character had been in the Sarlacc pit for 140 years, not maybe 4 years, right? Which is what we saw with the timeline. So unless the Sarlacc pit just drains all testosterone from your body while it dissolves you, then I don't know what happened to Boba Fett. Right? Boba Fett went in the Sarlacc, and Grandpa Fett came out of the Sarlacc.
I don't think it was the Sarlacc pit that did it. I think it was middle age. I think that's what happened. Is that Boba Fett hit middle age in it,
He
and
was
it
just
really
thinking about his 401k in there for a couple of years.
he was trying to calculate tax deduction. He was like, I got to get out of here.
I mean, it was so wrong, right? This episode, where he's out walking down the street with this chick, right? And these guys come up with shields and sticks and surround him.
Oh, yeah.
And my hero from childhood, and Boba Fett he was my favorite character, right?
Mhm.
I mean, the action figure that I had, I made a red cape for him, right? That he wore when I played with Star Wars. He had a red cape. He was awesome. But my hero gets surrounded by guys with shields and sticks and suddenly forgets he has a rocket pack and a flamethrower.
Mhm.
What? No. So I'm like, I'm done.
and don't forget the rocket Neo.
Yeah, the rocket knees. Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah, I will say though, if my experience in GoldenEye has anything to say about any of this, if you use the rockets too close to somebody else, it can backfire.
Yeah.
That is
It's a cloud
that is
of
a
fire
good
that
point.
spreads
But,
the whole level.
but if you go flying for a jetpack, you just easy way out that.
That's true.
I agree with Brannon in that.
Yeah. Leave Agent May / Mulan exactly where she is. Jetpack out of there and be like, hey, sorry, Finnick.
Yeah.
And that's totally what Fett would have done. He would have flown up, torched a bunch of guys, disintegrated a bunch of guys, dropped the grenade,
And the mic.
He would have been done.
Yeah.
He would have used the golden gun.
Yeah, I gotta say, in the 5 minutes that I saw him on screen between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, I could have created that same backstory for Boba. Now, speaking of backstories, in your comic book, The Chronicles of Faith, which goes along the line, it tells the story of King David. You guys take a really
Or
interesting
David.
perspective. You're so fired. You guys take a really interesting perspective on the story because in the story, as told through the comic book, y'all are doing it as though King David is telling these stories to his son, Solomon. And so really what we're getting is the retelling of David's backstory from the king to his son. Now, we've only gotten to preview episode 0 or issue 0, where he starts to tell him about how he, fought a bear, because you guys didn't send us any other press release stuff. And we're not salty about that at all. I'm not upset that I don't have a PDF that I can print out and give to the children in my church and excite them to go fund your Indiegogo page. Like, that's not on me. It doesn't hurt my bottom line at all. So if you guys could tell us, where are you guys going with issues number 1 and number 2?
Wait a minute, I can't hear you. I'm typing. I'm trying to send you an email right quick. So.
Yeah, I was texting Brannon, mail now.
Yeah.
No, it's just that idea, and that is just something that is start in the idea of everyone knows the story of David,
Right.
and we joke, the inside joke is what Solomon say, like, hey, everyone knows that story. But the actual idea of that is, it's just one idea and one intention. The idea is to recreate what is said in Deuteronomy 6. Is just tell your kids what God has done for your people. And if we go to put ourselves in the context, it's just figure it out that that's what happened. And you have no TV, you have no cell phone, you have only the story of the heroes of your people. And just biblical heroes, and you just spend all your afternoon telling your kids what about that's going to happen. So one of the things we want to do is we trying to create like, hey, you maybe know this story, but you don't know it fully. We're trying to put you in the same place of Solomon, because everyone knows the story of David. Everyone knows David versus Goliath, but we're trying the reader to be just like Solomon and say, hey, why don't you tell me the rest? Because there's 2 books in the Bible completely about David, and David versus Goliath is just 1 chapter.
Yeah.
And not even the entire chapter. So.
Yeah, and we really double down in issue 1, which I will send to both of you, by the way.
Oh,
which you're
thank
welcome
you. How
and
generous.
which you're welcome to share with all the kids at your church.
What an unprompted, generous act.
I know. This is the kind of thing that you guys can expect from a partnership between Brainy Pixel and Mercy Ways.
Yeah, you should have to invite us to a podcast and just let us know that you need it.
That was a Venus style back over the net.
But we're really trying to double down on that with issue 1, because while it seems right that this is the story of David, and it absolutely is, David's story touches a lot of other people.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, it touches King Saul quite, in a major way, all throughout several books of the Bible and the history that follows those. It touches his father and his brothers and sisters. It touches the prophet Samuel, and it will even eventually touch the nation of the Philistines. And so we began to expand our view a little bit in issue 1. And we draw the camera back and we get to see how these other threads are playing into David's story, leading up to a moment that we know is coming. But by the time we get, a few pages into issue 1, we're really not sure how we're going to get there. And it's that journey that is so much fun, and that we're having a blast going along.
So one of the things that, Yvonne, just so you know, that Brannon just lamented about the very first time that he was on our show, he was like, the Chronicles of Faith was so good, but this guy at Mercy Ways is making me do so much research. Like, I'm having to read all of these books I've never even heard of, and they don't spell anything right, and I'm having to learn a new language. That he was really very complimentary about the way that you guys are approaching the story of David. And so, being that we're all believers, I have a question specifically about the approach to the story as it relates to using texts outside of the Bible. Now, it's one of the things that a lot of people become like very nervous of, especially when we're handling biblical characters. When you say, all right, well, we're going to use an extra biblical text or a text that's not the Bible itself in order to tell this story. And you guys are using the Talmud as well as a few other historical documents. how are you handling the biblical material versus the stuff that you're reading in the Talmud? And why do you think it's important that you use both of those in order to tell the story of David?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to make clear we are completely respectful with the Bible story. We believe that is the word of God. We believe that is tell what we need to tell. But if you notice, one of the things the Bible is hard to get is just the actual historical context.
Mm-hmm.
What happened in there? It's just what if the moment of even is how the valley of Elah actually looks. What does the other people actually eat? How the other people actually look? And you can. And one of the questions we are talking is if we make a new approach of David, there is other information that we can find out about David that is not on the Bible. Not to say because we're going to step on the Bible, because we're not going to do that.
Right.
We're just trying to fill the gap because we're trying to actually. There's a lot of stuff in the people of Israel about David. He's just a national hero.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot ignore that there's a lot of tales about David in the Talmud that is going to help us to actually understand better David. There's one story that for us is just stuck in our mind, and it is what David it was a king. When he was king, and the king has the duty to tell the Torah. And David was one kind of king that actually was a people person. He just take off all the royal robes. He just go and sit in the floor with the people. He opened the scroll and he's go in the middle of the people we speak. He's not sitting in the throne. And that actually helped us to create, okay, that is the kind of person that David actually is. And then you're going to find all the stuff that is in the New Testament about David. And you go to the book of Chronicles, you go to the book of Samuel, and you go what the historical people like Josephus actually said. Mm-hmm. There is actually helps a lot about creating that historical context. It's not that we're trying to add something to the Bible and we create some story from the comic, but it's just like when one pastor has to preach one sermon from the Bible, he has to go into the Greek to know what the word means. He has to go to the historical context to know what happened there. So we're trying to grab that and put it into a comic that actually help us to make the story even richer in just trying to understand what is happening in that moment. So it doesn't mean we step on the Bible. We're trying to actually create something compelling from the Bible and grabbing all the stuff in the other side. So I don't know if that's answered your question. I hope it does.
Yeah, it does. It also sounds like your pastors are doing way too much work. You can get all your sermons online. You can just rip them off from other people. Trust me, your folks aren't going to know the difference. Mine don't. That's not true. Those are really important things, though.
It makes sense. We were talking to Brian Godawa recently about viewing the Bible as the I'm trying to remember the wording, the uncontestable word of God.
Yes.
But also viewing it through the language of the time, especially if you're trying to visualize it.
Yeah.
Seeing creating a scene where David is with his people, what would that look like? Right. So using the Talmud for that makes sense.
Yeah, and David was a warrior. He was a musician. He was a poet. He was a dancer, though not very many people are really fond of that, especially his wife at the time. But there are a lot of things about David that make him not just a really fascinating historical figure, but also that make him one of the most well-rounded historical characters that has ever existed. Brannon, what has y'all's approach been on making sure that you are showing David as a complete and whole person and not just focusing in on one facet of his personality?
So great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So one of the things that the team at Mercy Ways does very, very well is exactly what you're talking about. And they deep dive these characters. It's not just copy paste from the Bible, from scripture, and then let's go draw some pictures to kind of match that. We're doing tons of research, into pottery of the time, into architecture of the time, into the metallurgical capabilities of Israel at the time of the Philistine army. There's all of this stuff that we're bringing to bear from the historical aspect, from the biblical aspect, to get that baseline understanding of who these characters are. And then they did something really interesting where we went through an exercise where we said, okay, after we've read these books of the Bible, after we've read all this historical context, now go back and reread this passage that we're going to be boarding, right, in the comic. Mm-hmm. And as you're reading it, what's the first three characters that pop into your mind for David? What's the first three characters that pop into your mind for Samuel? What's the first three characters that pop into your mind for Saul? And we're pulling from modern, media, right? So one of the couple that spring to mind for David was Link from Zelda, right? And one of the most surprising one was Marty McFly, from Back to the Future. He's the youngest son. He's a little bit of a underdog character. Nobody ever really listens to him until he gets his moment to shine, and then he bravely steps forward. So it's very much similar to what you do in screenwriting, in that you try to develop a picture of who this character is by association, archetypes, right? Yeah. We've got a couple of characters in issue 1, for instance, that we needed some characters to be on stage to do some things for us. And we thought it would be great to bring them in and base them on R2-D2 and C-3PO. And we hope people kind of pick up on that context. They still have their own roles to play and their own personalities, but we started with a core of something that we knew and that was familiar. And so I think doing that helps round these characters out, helps them feel more vibrant and more realistic, and they really do just leap off the page.
One thing that actually helps us is, even if we don't notice, in all these characters drink from David, because the original underdog hero is David. He's someone who actually never won, somebody who never expected to do something great. He was just a shepherd. And if you go and see like all these character guys based on David and drink from David, we're trying to drink back what all the character has done and put it into our David. It's just not to say, we're going to grab something from Luke Skywalker and we're going to quote. It's just helped to create a compelling character, because I really like the Luke Skywalker who always has hope, even when nobody has hope that his father can change, that his father has still, and that is also what David does when the entire army has no hope that they can defeat Goliath. He go and step up and say, okay, I'm going in the name of the Lord. And it doesn't mean that we just create a Luke Skywalker who actually act like David. He's just trying to find that stuff that actually help you to identify yourself with a character. It's just drink the pop culture drink from the Bible. Now we just sip it a little bit from pop culture to actually make a compelling Bible character.
Because what happens is when you're writing a character, invariably you get to a point and you kind of write yourself to a point where you have to ask yourself, well, what would this character do in this situation? And unless you just know that character really, really well, right, then you're going to fall back on something. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build that kind of bedrock of personality traits, of attitudes, of responses, of kind of go-to emotions that a real person would dwell on or that we would draw from. And that's what we use for our character. So you do the very same thing when you're writing a screenplay or a script for a movie. So.
Very interesting.
Well, the artwork too is outstanding. Yvonne?
That's all Yvonne. Yeah. And that's his pencil.
So for Yvonne, how did you approach, the creative decision to visualize this important character in world history, much less, the
biblical history? Yeah.
One thing that we want to do is we want to create a character that you can identify with. And if you go to see, we love just storytelling. And if you go to see the design of David, you're going to see that all his clothes is just like fixed. It's just have stuff like this is belong to somebody else. And if you go and see that David was the 8th son of 7 boys, and I'm not the younger brother, but every younger brother knows that you have to wear what your old brother doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
So figure it out. Be the
Luckily,
8th
we're
one.
both older brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I'm older brother, so but figure it out what the 8th boy has to wear.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just you have to wear all the stuff. And one of the things we're trying to do is create something that you can identify. If you see the scarf he wears, it's just all the tearing up, all the little hair is just it looks like old. And we're trying to create something. It has a lot of Link from Zelda in the visual. It's just we're trying to create a hair that actually is not straight. He always have a messy hair. He always is just like someone who it doesn't look perfect, but you have to be brave. So we want to create a character that doesn't look perfect, but he looks brave. So one of the approach we want to do is that. And if you see the slingshot has three roads tied on. It's just because it doesn't gonna be. It's his weapon. He has to fix that slingshot to actually be more precise. And he has like a harp that he has built himself. And we're trying to create like a David who is actually I don't know what is the word in English, but he worked with his hands.
Yeah.
He's just someone who actually worked with his hand. He's just not someone who had easy in his life. And the style is just the style that we in Mercyway work a lot. It's just a little bit of manga, a little bit from American comic. And one of the things we love is just put details in pages because we love the storytelling of setting up some narrative that is actually looks like a movie, but it's not a movie at all. It's a comic.
So I'm curious as I cut Danley off here because it sounded like he was excited about asking a question.
I was just gonna say, as I cut you back off, you do a good job.
We're professional broadcasters.
portraying David as someone who works with his hands, who's created, the staff above that doesn't look like something he picked up in the Goron shop for.
Right. Yeah.
He traded 100
have
rupees.
like robes. He
Yeah.
just assembled that. And if in the entire story, you're gonna see that he works with wood a lot.
Yeah. And it kind of has a bit of, you've mentioned Luke Skywalker a couple of times. It does sort of have that Star Wars feel, is that the world that y'all have created in the comic book feels very lived in. It was one of the things that was so unique about the first Star Wars, looking back at it, is that it wasn't clean.
Shiny. Yeah.
Yeah. It was in space, but it was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and everything, at Luke's moisture farm that his aunt and uncle owned looked like it was abused.
R2-D2 and C-3PO don't even know what a duster is.
Yeah, like they've been on, they've been on space cruisers for years, and that everything kind of looks lived in, and the world that you've built is very much like that. Now, I'm curious because I haven't heard you guys address this on any other interview, and that is, how did Brainy Pixel and Mercy Ways find each other and start working together on such a unique project, and one that y'all are so passionate about?
Yeah, and why have you avoided talking about this?
Yeah. Why are you afraid? Why are you afraid to answer this question?
We're not afraid to answer the question. We're happy to answer the question.
You don't look happy.
Okay,
and it's all Yvonne's fault. So
good.
Always me.
No, and it's because he's such a brilliant artist. So I am an art director from way back. When I got my start in role playing games, that was one of the first things I did. I am not an artist myself, but I know what I like, and I know good art. I just have an eye for it, and so I've art directed on many projects, and so I'm always looking for amazing artists. And so I've always got an eye out. I know it when I see it. And I saw Yvonne's art, I believe, in a Facebook post, and was just blown away. It was some very early stuff that they were putting out to talk about. I think issue 0 before it was released, a preview. And I was just gobsmacked. The art was so amazing. There was a tremendous amount of talent there. And so I reached out to Yvonne and said, hey, I would love to, hire you sometime to do some work for me. I would love to collaborate on anything you want. Just let me know. And so he and I began a relationship over the internet, and just began talking back and forth. And before you know it, he and I are working on a couple of other smaller projects together. One of those has since emerged, and it's called Heaven's Hammers. And
which I'm excited about as a Thor fan.
Also great artwork.
Yeah, I've seen some of the artwork for Heaven's Hammers, and I'm like, oh, yes. This is exactly what the world needs right now.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah, and if you guys need a model, you just let me know. I'm pretty cheap.
All right, awesome.
If you need a model for Villager number 5, let me know.
And hey, we'll come back to that modeling stuff in a bit when we talk about Indiegogo rewards.
No problem.
But just need to stretch.
Yeah.
But as I really
Here's me
began
holding
to
my
get to know
sack.
Yvonne on the kind of that contractual level, he and I began to develop a friendship, a brotherhood. And he began to kind of tease some of the stuff that they were working on. And I began to really get a sense for the passion and for the prayerfulness and for the dedication to the Word of God that they were just imbuing in this project. And I asked to see some of it, and he gracefully showed me some. And I was, I was totally blown away. And I had an art budget at that point in time, for Brainy Pixel. It was for essentially several months of the year, the bulk of the year. And I went and told my business partner, I said, look, I want to spend my whole art budget on this project. This is a winner. I want to be a part of this at the ground floor. If they will let us produce the next issue or 2 of this comic, we need to get in on that. And so I pitched it to my business partner, and he was like, well, it's your art budget. Do what you want to with it. And I said, all right, great. And so then I pitched it to Yvonne and the gang at Mercy Ways, and they thought I was crazy at first. And when they started getting legal papers, from lawyers talking about agreements, they knew I was serious, and the rest is history.
That's the only way I know it's serious too.
When you start getting legal papers. Yeah. When they're no longer saying, Mr. Gibson, this parking ticket is 6 months past due if you do not appear in court. That's when you're, okay, it's
okay,
serious.
fine. All right.
But they have been just an amazing partner to work with. And it's my prayer that, Lord willing, we continue working on stuff together, moving forward in the future, as long as Yvonne and I can create stuff.
So when we're looking at this in kind of a modern context, right, that you guys are not just doing something very cool, telling a historical story that means so much to so many different cultures, but you're telling a story that is so far removed from your own culture and cultural context that it takes some massaging to do. Now, biblical stories are weird in that way, is that they are influential on us no matter what, tribe, tongue, nation we belong to. But especially with an Old Testament story, it's so specific to the time that it happened, to the people of Israel, to the historical context and everything that goes along with it, and how really, especially in the story of David, it transforms everything that was happening in the Near East and even has effects until now. How do you handle the cultural context of that, being that we are, in North America and Central America, so far removed from that Near Eastern culture? How do you bridge that gap?
I wish I can tell you we go to Israel, but we're not. But we do a lot of research.
You got Google Images.
We actually try to. It's just like when we are in issue 1, we have the chance to work with the Philistine, and because it's part of the story, we're just not going to reject that. It's just we want to try to see what is happening in the camp of the Philistine. And Brannon just write that in issue 1. He loved that idea to write the bad guy of the story. And then we start to research to understand why these people just act the way they are. And one of the fun facts is how all this stuff, what they just eat for a living, or just how the Philistine eat, and they eat mostly duck and pork. That is the eat that they eat.
Did you say dog?
Yes, I do say duck. They eat duck and pork. Yeah, I know. I'm a dog person. Was shocking for me too.
Well, it
But
just sounds remarkably like our producer's diet that I think maybe he might be a Philistine.
well, you have a slingshot. If you have a slingshot, you just know what to do. Well,
Did you hear?
and that,
Did you wait? Did you hear what Yvonne said?
Yeah, if I have a slingshot, I know what to do. Yeah.
You have to quote that if you come with me.
Okay.
With sword and
Got it.
spear, I
You got
came
it.
to you in the name of the Lord. And then you shut. You just close your eyes and shut. And well, it's just to put that is we have to actually know that characters, know what the Philistines are, and if you while you understand that, you also understand how different the people of Israel are from the people of Philistine. And you understand that most of the people that the stuff that God asked the people of Israel to do in the Old Testament is to separate his people from these people. It's just like the food that I just tell you. That is the two food that people of Israel did not have to eat. It's just unclean food for them. And then you will understand how the ritual works in the Philistine and how the difference between why they worship and how they worship and the difference between how Israel has to worship. And it's help you because you become like, oh, this is useful for the story that we're telling. This is useful for this. And you have to research. One funny stuff, we go to a podcast with someone and he said, I just was shocked how the Valley of Elah was so accurate to when I was in Israel. And that actually just helped us a lot to say, well, okay, we did a good job in that.
Yeah.
And because it's just happy to see that the people who actually been in the place can identify the place. And if you've never been like me in that place, it helps you to put in that context in that place. So that is why we do.
And there's a I always want to underscore what Yvonne is saying here, that we don't try to, just overload you with detail as a part of the comic. We're trying to be very subtle with the stuff that we're learning. So, for instance, when we first get to journey into the Philistine camp, we do so through the eyes of a new priest of Dagon, right? The god of the Philistines at that time. And there are little subtle things that happen. They're not by they're not by happenstance, and they're not just random. That happen to the priest as he enters into the city, and each one of those things was put in there purposefully to illustrate what the Philistines' focus is, as opposed to what is the focus of the Israelites. So when you read this comic, it's really more about experiencing a little slice of what it might have been like to live at that point in time, based on a lot of research. And one thing I will add to Yvonne is a lot of prayer.
Yeah.
A lot of prayer has gone into this project. I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours of prayer and seeking God's will and seeking his face. And I think that's one of the reasons why it seems to resonate in such an amazing way. I think it's the Holy Spirit.
And one of the things we always talk with Brannon is we don't want to preach in this story. We don't want you to give you a sermon, even though we speak like that is what the sermon do. We just want to tell you a good story. That happens to be the David of the Bible and happens to have the God of the Bible as a character. And we want to tell you a story because it's just like, this is not only for Christian. If you're not a Christian and you grab this comic, we're trying to make the art something to look. If you see a Spider-Man and then you see David, you have to make a decision just like Grogu. And to what kind of book do you want? But not because the art is bad in the Christian comic. It's because you feel compelling to your stories. But we're trying to do that. And if you're not a Christian and you happen to choose the David, we want you to enjoy this story. And maybe we can actually help you or trying to use the narrative to help you to inspire you to have faith in the God of David. That is our goal.
What if I want David and Spider-Man?
You better do some extra chores. So I do love that idea that it should be this decision not between art styles or the Christian book and the non-Christian book, but which of these two things really speaks to you. And you've done as Danley said, the artwork in it is absolutely stunning. The storytelling.
I said something good.
Is great. Yep. Well done. Up top.
All right.
The storytelling is great, and it does have a feel to it that's different than other things that we've read about David. Like this, to me, from what we've read in issue 0, because we haven't got issues 1 or 2. So what we read in issue 0, one of the things that was so cool about it is that I could take it. I showed it to some of the children in our church, and they were talking about David the same way that they would, Spider-Man or Iron Man or, some of the better comic book heroes like Thor and not Batman. And so they were talking about, David in such a way that it had the same kind of, heroic admiration, and yet they were doing it about a biblical character. And this, I think, to your point, really sets up an opportunity for us to not just be able to share our faith, but in the way that David does it, it's very intentional about a father relaying through oral history what his past was like and the important things that happened to him. How does that relationship between a father and son impact the way that you guys are telling the story? And are you drawing off of your own experiences for that? And are you trying to get this to be something that you encourage the parents to do, okay, so your kids already kind of know about this now. You can take the next step. Now they're going to want to hear more stories from you about like what the next step is. And now you can explain a little bit more about your faith. That was really 5 questions in one. So good luck.
No, I would say yes to all of them. We're absolutely trying to encourage discussion, between fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, mothers and sons, whoever's reading this with whoever, right? The back page is the Selah page, and there are questions there to prompt discussions and to prompt thoughts. And sometimes the questions are, hey, just think about this, right? And then compare and contrast in your brain. So we're absolutely trying to engender, some sort of internal processing about this story, because that's the magic and that's the power of a story, right? We all open this podcast talking about stories about made up people that have never existed, right? They've just existed on a screen somewhere. But they're inside of us, and we think about them and we talk about them as if they're real people. And that's what we want people to do with Chronicles of Faith, right? The original reason for Chronicles to even be in the Bible is because the people of Israel had forgotten, right? They had been in exile and they had forgotten the Pentateuch. They had forgotten these amazing stories of what God had done. And Chronicles is about, hey, you need to remember what God has done for you. Retell those old stories. It was the original reboot. And so that's what we're trying to do with Chronicles of Faith, is we're trying to reboot the book of reboots, right? And re-engender a new generation to have faith in what God has done for many, many generations, right? Not just yours and mine, but all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And remember what God has done and how good he is, and then be inspired to have faith and write your own chronicle of faith. So that is absolutely underscoring what we're doing. And as storytellers, Yvonne and we're storytellers at our core. We're absolutely drawing on that, telling stories to your siblings or your kids or your dad telling you a story. Absolutely.
But we always have the dream, like we don't try to answer the question, can I trust God? But we're trying to tell the story of someone who always has been trusting in God. So if you relate with someone, you can maybe just said, hey, maybe I can trust God. And then your own Chronicles of Faith is going to start. Because the title of the book is Chronicles of Faith. We're just focusing on David right now. Maybe someday we're going to focus in Samson, we're going to focus in Gideon, we're going to focus on Elijah, and all the Chronicles of Faith. But the idea is to show you that you can have your own Chronicles of Faith. The only thing you need to do is you need to trust God. And what kind of God do you trust? Well, we present David and the God of David in this comic. It's just a relationship. It's one page that is just help a lot to see what this comic is the prayer page. When David just stopped and pray before to actually fight Goliath. And you can see that pages have some hand lettering stuff that it just look like the Psalms. Is what is happening in the head of David. You go into the head of David. He's just praying to know, I know you're gonna help me with this Philistine, so I'm here to fight him. And maybe someday you're gonna stop and you close your eyes and you're gonna pray.
Well, it's interesting you mention, right now the Chronicles of Faith. You're working on David. I was wondering, who the next one is, because the artwork is fantastic.
Yeah,
and
it's really
I
great.
think it could lend itself really well. You mentioned Samson. I hadn't thought of him, but that would make a great comic series.
He actually appeared in one of the pages of Issue 0 that you will have later today. And
No, I've got issue 0. It's
You already have
fantastic.
it?
Yeah, I have 0, but I don't have 1.
Yeah, 0.
2.
Okay. He actually appeared in the middle page when you see all the heroes of faith. Because David just remember what his father is doing. You can see Joshua, you can see Gideon, you can see Samson. And maybe some of them is going to be the next one after we finish with David. And
we really don't know who's next, Dan. I mean, we've got 14 issues to go, and planned out. I'll be 15 total when we're done for David's arc, and then after that, maybe we'll let the fans decide. Who's next. I think that might be interesting. But
The
that's a
Nephilim.
good idea.
there's plenty of opportunity in the Bible to tell stories of the great heroes of the faith, and we even feel that there's opportunity possibly to tell extra biblical stories. Chronicles of Faith, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, or Chronicles of Faith, Lottie Moon, or Martin Luther King Jr. Or who maybe Ivan Anaya. Who knows? But I mean, we could tell these real stories of real people that are outside the Bible. Not that the people inside the Bible aren't real, but these people that are maybe a little more modern, and tell their chronicle of faith as well. So we see this as a series that could go on and outlive, potentially both Yvonne and myself.
Yeah,
Lord willing.
I think you're talking about stories of people that have lived in a modern context, right? Corey Ten Boom's story is one that I think would be
amazing.
would be phenomenal. Or Eric Little, the Flying Scotsman who was an Olympian and then ends up in a Japanese internment camp and gives his life to save his family and to save his churches. He was a missionary in China. Those would be incredibly compelling stories and great kind of segues between here's our 15 issues about David, and then here's somebody who's lived for Christ in a more modern context.
Yeah.
And then we hop back into the next thing. And the book of Judges obviously lends itself with some great stories. So does the book of First and Second Kings, which kind of handles the tail end of David's life. You have all the stories of David's mighty men. I want to know, how are you guys handling my favorite character in the story of David outside of the guy himself? Who do you think it is?
Jonathan.
No doubt, Jonathan. Jonathan is just an absolute beast, and the best friend anybody could ever hope to have. How are you guys handling the character of Jonathan? Because this is a guy from as I use a Chris Collinsworth line there. Here's a guy. This is a guy who had everything at his fingertips, gave it all up for his friend and to follow God's will, and for all intents and purposes, might have been an even greater warrior than what David was.
Yeah, I think the same. And we actually make a reference, and you can see like a sneak peek in the cover of issue 1.
Nice.
You can see a shadow fighting in the hill while the earth is trembling. And we make a mention, but the proper introduction of Jonathan is going to happen in issue 2, when he is going to present himself. In issue 1, we present Saul, and we just start the fall of Saul. We just, and this is, I have to show and make it's just, I have to say that Sophie or Letteris just make a great job to show how Saul is just falling, because we're trying to create like visual concept of this. And there's a moment when you feel the paranoid that Saul is feeling. And then you understand why, because he's just like a bad spirit who actually is hunting him. But we don't say that yet. but we're trying to show you that something is not right with Saul. Right. Something is really, really not right with Saul. So we're trying to introduce that, and in the next issue, in issue 2, that is called Brave and Humble, you're gonna see the proper introduction of Jonathan. He's an amazing character.
Yeah.
And one thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to see how they two become like good friends. It's just like, and there's a moment for me that is so awesome, and it's the moment when he take his royal robe and he give it to David. We're going to build to that moment because, like you said, he was wearing the prince robe, and he was anointing to be the next king, and he understand that God has chosen someone else. So David, for a moment, when he was a warrior, he was wearing, before he was a king, you have to picture that he was wearing the robe of Jonathan and also wearing the sword of Goliath. There's a cool moment because only 2 people had swords in Israel. That was King Saul and that was Jonathan. The other person who actually got a sword was David, and was the sword of Goliath. So David was building to become like, it's just like, figured it out, just if you ever see Final Fantasy VII, just Cloud.
Oh, yeah.
Huge sword.
Huge sword.
Yes.
That's something that we're trying to reach for David in the second arc. When he became the warrior, with the sword of Goliath and the robe of Jonathan. And how that happened, well, this is going to be issue 2. We'll have already a plan for that, and I hope you enjoy it because I love Jonathan too. I think he's a great character.
And there are so many little notes that happen in issue 1, where we're kind of, forecasting these things, right? Where we're planting these little seeds, even in the first opening pages of issue 1, where we actually get to talk about a little bit about Jonathan's sword and his father's sword, King Saul's sword. And then there's a little subtle little note in there as well of something that David has, related to King Saul. So there's so many layers to the story that we're just artfully trying to craft and to layer in there so that it's more than just I'm reading a Bible story. It's right. It's like if you're getting pulled into this world with all these nuances, and later on you're going to read and you're going to go, oh, that was there in front of me the whole time. I didn't realize it. And so we're trying to have all these little setups and payoffs. So
are we going to see, go ahead.
I was just saying, I love the idea of, and I love the reference of the Final Fantasy with Cloud and his sword. Cause it is a very funny idea of someone who's not a giant using Goliath's sword. I think I immediately thought of Final Fantasy and also Link using the giant sword from Ocarina of Time. It's a interesting visual. Imagining this huge sword.
Yeah, and in real life, this is something that really happened. So you said you've got 15 issues planned out. Are we going to get to see, like some comic books, for instance, we've mentioned Spider-Man a few times. Spider-Man often has these, they'll have issue 3, and then all of a sudden you'll get issue 3.1, and issue 3.1 kind of sets up a story for another character. Are we going to get to see David's Mighty Men in these issues? Are we going to get some of their stories? And really the story that I want the most to see illustrated by you guys is when Jonathan and his armor bearer go and just slay the entire, Philistine camp. Are we going to get to see Jonathan, hurling insults as he's, doing the Dread Pirate Roberts climb up the mountain? And he's like, it'd be a lot easier if you guys would help me before I killed you. Like are we going to get to see some of those kinds of things? Or is that potentially something in the future that y'all might do in like an episode, 4.1 or something like that?
Also the Witch of Endor. This is in the same, this is in the same vein.
I'm just going to say, we don't going to sit back with we're going to tell the entire story.
Awesome.
Even the Bathsheba stuff, even if you, in issues 1, you can find like just something that Brannon just wrote amazingly, and how that is just give you a seed that something bad is going to happen in the future. And we're going to see, I'm just going to tell you this, we're going to see that story, but in a fire camp with Jonathan telling that story to David.
Oh, heck yes.
After he defeat Goliath and this is going to happen And
so happy.
this is how we're going to build a friendship of this hymn. It's just David just say, hey, you're the son of the king, but you defeat a giant right now. And you're telling me, and they just tend to share the stories. And Jonathan actually tell the entire story of that happening. That is going to happen after the fight of Goliath.
That makes a lot of sense because that is exactly what guys would do.
Yeah.
As we would sit around the campfire and Dave was like, oh, I killed a giant. Jonathan's, let me tell you the time I climbed down a mountain, up a mountain, and killed a whole camp full of Philistines.
They're eating some manna and sharing stories.
Yeah, like, hey, great job with your one giant that you killed.
Yeah, one-upping each other.
Yeah. Yep. So I
you know,
slayed the
bear in
entire
mind,
army
guys,
overnight.
we would love to be able to tell parallel stories, right? But right now, it's a couple of guys here at Brainy Pixel and a few folks down at Mercy Ways, churning and burning, you know, trying to do everything we can with what God has blessed us with. But if we're able to blow things up, right, and just have this Indiegogo explode, then we'll go bring on more people and we'll start releasing issues, you know, in parallel. We would love to have that problem and try and figure out how to make all that happen and tell all these wonderful stories, because we think that all those stories are worth it. And we think that this generation desperately needs it. And so, you know, it's our prayer that people will vote with their dollar and, you know, and go and support us on Indiegogo and on Patreon or wherever, you know, by buying copies or what have you. But let us know that they want this kind of stuff, because if they want it, we would absolutely be honored to make it.
Yeah,
we want it.
Yeah, we want it. So
Okay.
talk to us a little bit about your Indiegogo campaign. Now, we've talked to some other comic book artists and some other people who've done crowdfunding, like Doug Tenaple, a friend of the show. He did his Earthworm Jim books like that. His Bigfoot Bill books were all done on Indiegogo.
Also the real deal.
Yeah, Fred Keel, a friend of ours who writes, who's a Christian comic book author, who we should put you guys in touch with.
Yeah.
Has a phenomenal comic book out called Queen Cobra. I think he's got 6 issues out now. He's done Indiegogo.
Nice
Talk
title.
to us a little bit about what Indiegogo is like for you guys, how we can get involved in your Indiegogo account, and why you feel like it's important that this is a project that is crowdfunded versus, you know, going outside and raising the funds in some other, what we would consider, you know, quote unquote traditional means.
Sure. So first of all, it's really cool that Mercy Ways kind of originally viewed this as a crowdsourced kind of deal. And one of the challenges that they found early on is that you can't do an Indiegogo from El Salvador. The laws are such that they won't allow you to do it. So Brainy Pixel coming in and helping out, being a U.S. company, we can do that for them now. And so it was another great kind of, you know, testimony and kind of confirmation that, hey, it's good. It's a good thing that we partner with these guys. But for us, we want to utilize the Indiegogo platform to help get the word out there, and to really begin to engage our user base and our readers directly. That's one of the great things about crowdfunding and about sites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter, is they allow you that immediate connection and that immediate kind of responsiveness to the people that are going to be consuming your product. And honestly, you know, with things going the way they are, with, you know, distribution and shipping delays and things of that nature, we feel like a direct consumer type, you know, relationship is going to be way better for people in the future who are going to be reading comics anyway. We'll definitely put them out on the platforms you're looking for them from. But having that initial connection, I mean, when I was a kid, if I could have talked, you know, directly to George Lucas and, you know, told him what I thought about Boba Fett, then that would have been, you know, the coolest thing ever. Right. And so I think the internet and these sites like Indiegogo allow us that capability. And so we're leaning forward into that. And so far, you know, the response has been pretty good. We're, I think, 12% or 13% funded right now.
15. We're already at 15.
Hey,
sorry,
nice.
15% funded. Been out a couple of weeks, and we're raising a large amount. You know, the production of a comic at this quality is not cheap, and so we're trying to raise about $7,500. And so we're just encouraging folks to go out and find us on Indiegogo via the links that you guys hopefully will be posting, or if you just go to Indiegogo and you search for David and Faith in the search bar, we're the first one that come up. So definitely go out there, back us if you can. Definitely pray for us, even if you can't back us, and share on social media, because if you can't drop $5 in the bucket this month, well, maybe somebody else can. So definitely help spread the word out there.
And one thing that we're trying to do is just we're trying to keep, just like as you are excited to see this, we are excited to do it. We love this project, and even though it takes a lot of research to do it, but and if you back us from $10 from on, there's the only way you can find issue 01. And it's not a small issue. It's a 32-page issue, full color, and no ads, no ads in any way. And we're trying to keep that amount. We're trying to try to keep, because it's a big story. It's something you cannot pull in 24 pages. And the first one is just a prologue. When David, he fights some wild animals and all that stuff that it's not in the Bible. But if you read the issue 0, you will find interesting connection with the New Testament. But right now we go deep in the book of Samuel. We go deep and know the family of David and know his brothers. He has 2 sisters and nobody actually mentioned too much. And we go deep in all that kind of stuff. So we introduce Saul, and we introduce Abner, Jesse, and all the characters that belong to the story. So, and then we come from $10. If you back us with $5, you get issue 0. But if you back it with $10, you get issue 0, issue 1, and a lot of perks. But if you go to the bottom, if you back us with $105, you can also become a character in the next issue. You can be part of David, and that is the art. If you see the artwork in the same artwork, you can become. And we give you the choice. You can be a Philistine or you can be an Israelite. You know who wins, but you have the choice. Everything is a choice right now.
Can we pay for someone else to be drawn as a Philistine?
Sure.
Yeah, if you back us twice, you can do that. Or if you back us one, you say, it's not me.
Don't put me in the story.
Yeah, I want my brother to be a
I'm
Philistine.
going to send you a picture of a Philistine and then just give it to him for Christmas. Look, here's you.
Yeah,
That'll be great.
and we're gonna put the credits. We're gonna make sure that people know what character is, and we're gonna just have thank you for all the support. This is the character introducing.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, my cousin that let me listen to rap music, my bad cousin, we need to get him as a Philistine and then just fulfill everything my grandparents ever said about him. Well, Yvonne and Brannon, this has been an absolute pleasure. And as always, we end all of our episodes with a segment we call Controlled Rowdiness. So we're going to ask you guys some rapid fire questions. You can answer them as quickly or as at length as you would want to. There are no right answers, but there are several wrong ones. So just be careful that you don't step on any of those landmines. And Danley, I am going to turn this over to you to get us started.
Time for Big Dan's shot. Here we go. How much AP? This is for Yvonne. How much AP in D&D terms does David's slingshot have?
I don't know if I get the answer.
Attack
HP
points.
Attack point.
AP,
Okay.
yeah.
I will say 12, but if you add the Stone of Faith, it's just over 9,000.
Oh, wow.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Just like Vegeta.
Yeah, definitely something that you want to add the Stone of Faith to then.
Yeah.
All right, Brannon, if David is a mix of Marty McFly and Link, does he use his ocarina to call his hoverboard?
I would think as long as he was wearing his orange vest, he would have to.
Okay, that makes sense.
I
think that checks out.
See, this is a story question. This is also for Brannon. How would you accomplish a Cubekins David crossover?
Already done. Issue 1.
Oh,
Already.
really?
We see Cubekins?
There is a Easter egg in issue 1, and there is a connection. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Wow.
All right.
A little bit of a prophecy fulfilled on the Rev and Reprobate show.
Yvonne, how come El Salvador doesn't compete in the Winter Olympics?
Well, we don't have a winter.
That's a correct answer.
Yeah,
Good
there
job.
you go. Correct answer. Well done. I was looking. They've competed in nearly every Summer Olympics, but on the Wikipedia
winter.
page it says El Salvador. I mean, Jamaica
Yeah, I was
has a
gonna say,
bobsled
Jamaica did
team,
it.
right? You'd think El Salvador would.
It's because John Candy's not here anymore.
Yeah. Well, R.I.P.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So this is for Ivan. For Ivan, who is better at telling the future, and who's better at hunting hobbits? And this is the Witch of Endor versus the Witch King of Angmar.
Wow. I will say the Witch Offender.
Is better at what?
I think they predict the future.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, there
the
you
Witch
go.
King of Angmar is definitely better at hunting hobbits. Although, they never really get them.
No, they
So
don't.
we actually don't know that answer, I think.
Well,
It's your
they're
turn.
good at hunting, not necessarily catching.
Yeah,
So
there you
that's
go.
the difference.
They're really good
that's
at
true.
hunting. They're
Yeah.
they're always seconds away from catching the hobbit.
So you did say, Brannon, that Brainy Pixel is lucky to partner with Mercy Ways because we have Indiegogo in America, and that's not something that they can do in El Salvador. Are you guys going to start pitching Brainy Pixel as a creative money laundering company for organizations in other countries?
Yeah, well, we already are, right? So, I mean,
Just go to Indiegogo, David Faith. We will launder your money.
Just put it right in that. You could just put $1
Well,
in your Maytag washing machine, and it'll go straight to Mercy Ways.
well, the great thing about that is actually Indiegogo is the one laundering the money. We're just happy.
That's
Oh
right.
yeah,
There
yeah.
you
There you go. Nice. That was a very good fella's answer, Brandon.
We don't actually do it.
It's not I'm not touching the money. It's your money.
Yeah, we're
It's
just
Indiegogo.
the middleman. You know what I'm saying? Just
That's
We
it.
just drive the trash trucks. We don't do nothing.
I didn't know there was
Strange
a body
Waste,
in here.
we're just waste management. I don't know.
Yeah.
We're
Strange
so
that you
close
should-
to become the Godfather. So.
we actually are seeing. This is funny that you mentioned that because we actually start seeing a lot of international donations for the Indiegogo.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's about, but
Prophecy number 2 fulfilled.
Fulfilled. Man, we are good at this.
We are good.
We should be professionals.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody wants to sponsor us, you can make us professionals. Right?
You can make another podcast to say the Wizard of Endor.
There we go.
There you go.
I like that.
The Wizard of Endor.
We funding right now for the Wizard of Endor is on Indiegogo. Just look up
You have to go
David
to
and
Brainy
Faith.
Pixel first. You have to go to Brainy Pixel first,
Yeah,
and
go to
then
Brainy
you can
Pixel.
launch the Indiegogo.
If you pay $108, they will put you in as the Philistine known as the Wizard of Endor, and you'll be right at the back. You'll be one of the first Philistines Jonathan kills in his story to David around the campfire.
You'll be able to drive an ATST in their new comic.
But if you double that, you can be the Goliath armor bearer.
Ooh.
what my question is if it's the Witch of Endor, does she have a pet Ewok? That's really
Yes.
what I want to know.
Yes, she does. She has a pet Ewok, and it's actually Warwick Davis.
And there's a little thought bubble that comes up. It just says, I'm trying to remember what he says now. I just blanked. I had it a second ago.
No, the thought bubble that comes
Whatever
up.
it is. Yub. There you go.
No, the thought bubble that comes up says, "I'm a Dakini."
Yeah. Okay, last question. Do you want to take it?
No, this one's all you, because I like the last question that you have written here, and I think that you can give it to both of them.
Okay.
Oh, I'm afraid.
Well, I was going to ask it to Brannon.
Yeah, I think they both need to answer this, though, because they tandem worked on this character.
I don't think we're thinking of the same question, but
Okay,
I'll go
maybe
for
not.
it. Brannon, was your first experience as an art director?
We're not thinking the same question. Go ahead.
Brannon, was your first experience as an art director putting the wrong color cape on Boba Fett?
Yes, apparently so. Yeah, that's not the wrong color. That's the right color.
That's
mean,
the
imagine
right
Boba
color.
Fett
Lucas
with
got it
red
wrong.
cape.
No, yeah,
It's
Boba
beautiful.
Fett. That's because two of the tubes in Brandon's childhood TV were broken whenever he. That's why he thought it was
You're
red.
forgetting something here. The art director actually grabbed the art and just made corrections. So he corrected
Right.
the cape of Boba Fett.
That was the original
Yes.
concept.
Yeah,
It was
the
red.
That was the
Brannon,
original
the
concept.
Brannon Hollingsworth Special Edition 1997.1 is Boba Fett with a
Red.
red
And that's
cape.
the only change?
with the rocket that shot out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's correct.
In your version, does Han Solo shoot first?
Yes.
Good.
Okay,
I like that.
there you
I like
What
that
are you
version.
talking
Okay,
about?
okay. So then the actual question that I was hoping Danley would answer, the one that he wrote, was David's shepherd staff versus the master sword. Which one's wins? And we're going to give that to Yvonne.
Well, that depends.
Oh my goodness! Here we go. Bringing subjects.
What
Well, I
master
just
sword?
I just rolled an 18.
The one from Ocarina of Time, who actually is go in time, of the one from Breath of the Wild, who actually breaks really easy.
Yeah, it breaks all the time.
Yeah, I never played Breath of the Wild, so anything
Get a Switch and join the rest of the world.
after Nintendo 64 to me is heresy. So Ocarina of Time,
Well,
not
I
this
must
anathema.
say, I'm gonna say this.
Yes.
David used the blade to build this stuff.
Ooh.
Okay.
Boy, that's
Nice.
tricky.
So it's imbued with one of the Triforce.
Yes.
Triforce of
This
courage.
was before Nebuchadnezzar
If-
planted the Deku tree in the
If you
gardens of
shake
Babylon.
if you shake that stuff 74 times, you can travel time. Because Ocarina of Time is from Nintendo 64.
Yeah. What song did
I'm
David
going to get
play
about 5
from?
times into that and get bored. I'll be like, I'm never going to make it.
What song from Ocarina of Time did David play to his sheep to bring them back?
Well, it has to be the Saria song.
Which one?
Saria song?
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
song.
Yep.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
I would have accepted Sun Song also.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if you go to Saria song, that is the wood.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
It brings
Yeah.
the was it the horses? I'm trying to remember what it
Yeah.
brings. Yeah, it brings Epona.
Yep.
Great answer.
Brandon
And
came
sheep
in
are
with
just like little horses, right?
Yes.
yeah,
So-
yeah, that's
It's
it.
just- they're basically the same.
I would have said all he needed was a milkshake to bring those sheep to the yard. So thanks you guys very much for coming on the show. Y'all have been absolutely awesome. Make sure that you go check out Brainy Pixel and Mercy Way Studios. Go support what they're doing on Indiegogo. And before we let you guys go, let's start with Yvonne. Tell our audience where it is that they can find Mercy Way Studios on social media so that they can follow you and see what you guys are doing.
Well, the easy way is just go to mercyway.com, and you go to the bottom and you're going to see all our social media. And go to Indiegogo too, and you can find us there.
Awesome. And Brandon, what about for Brainy Pixel?
You can go to brainypixel.com, or we are at Brainy Pixel or at Brainy Pixel Productions on just about every social media on the planet. I'm so sad to say that because I have to maintain all those.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
for
It was a
inviting us.
blessing.
Mercy Way Studios and Brainy freaking Pixel. Yvonne Anaya.
Yvonne and Brannon.
Brannon Ballin Hollingsworth.
yeah, perfect.
So those
I was gonna say Brandon Hollingsworth / Ballin, but Brandon
Ballin
Hollingsworth
Yeah, it's nice.
slides in home.
It's a
Home run.
yep. So Dan,
Yeah.
are you ready to potentially receive episode 1? Now I know we gave them a hard time. We did get a lot of the curated content from Brainy Pixel Studios the first time that we had them on. We got
I remember we printed it out
some of the early stuff from Tenet's Tales.
and we sold it down the street.
Yeah, we did. And there are a lot of people that think we are phenomenal comic book artists.
Yeah, we got a lot of funding from that.
We
We got
really
way
did.
over $7,500
Here's
worth.
the thing, right? When you don't put the words copyright or review copy in a watermark over things, people are going to print them and sell
It
them at a con.
Can be stolen.
Yeah. We didn't do that. The artwork for so
that
much
was
of
a
that
lie
stuff
from
is
the Reprobate.
really cool. The Heaven's Hammer stuff, which they talked about that they've been working on. If you've followed Brainy Pixel on Twitter, you can see a lot of the concept art for that. But the Chronicles of Faith, specifically the story of David, what they've done in issue 0, which is available for sale now at brainypixel.com in their curated content area, is absolutely amazing. I love the way that they're trying to tell the story. And it sounds like their ideas for how to do David's story arc are going to be really what we were hoping for when we had Brannon on. I guess it's probably been close to a year ago now, whenever we were first. Yeah, it's getting close to that point when we were first hearing about the Chronicles of Faith.
It's good to see other people working on things and it coming to fruition.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
One of these days it's going to happen for us. One of these days we're gonna work on something and it's gonna happen.
We talked to these guys a year ago and they were working on this and they did a good job.
They did a good job. No, they did, and it's nice to meet Yvonne because when we were talking to Brannon before, it was, this company in El Salvador, and Mercy Ways is doing all this stuff. And now seeing Yvonne is starting to do some stuff to promote the work. And we get to talk to the artist and the guy who, we jokingly said that Brannon lamented, of having to study. But when we talked to him off the air in the last episode, he was talking about how in-depth and really time-consuming the study for David in particular was, because they want to make sure that they get the character absolutely right. And I love the passion that's behind it, and the way that they did issue 0 was phenomenal. I'm really excited about
David is such a cool character. And we talk about that a little bit, that everybody, every child likely knows the story of David fighting Goliath. Even if it ends there, they've heard of that. So it is a very interesting story, rife with battles and fighting giants and the witch, which isn't necessarily David, it's Saul, but it's in the story of David. There's so many cool aspects to it. I'm glad that he is paying as close attention to the source material and the extra material. What's the word I'm looking for there? The
extra biblical,
the companion, the companion information,
the research book.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
because it is such an important story, again, that everyone knows.
It is, and I would say that I'm surprised that they're only doing 15 episodes. But if you've got issue 0, which if you don't, you can.
How many
go
episodes
right now
were you thinking?
The books are between like 24 and 32 pages long, so they're actually really long for comic books. Like if you were doing a normal like 18 to 22 page comic book, or maybe 24 on the long side, then it might take 20 issues to do, the story of David, to get the arc right and to make sure that you're including enough of the detail and the fun stuff that you keep people interested and engaged, because there's only so much of, when you look at David's life, like the first Psalm that he wrote is actually like in the middle of the book of Psalms. It's not Psalm 1. And so if you're following how everything goes chronologically, there's only so many of those things that you can extrapolate or say, okay, well, this is it, before you have to start looking at putting really impactful and really cool events or really cool characters on the cutting room floor. I mean, imagine if you were to go into Endgame, right? If you're writing Avengers Endgame and you get to a point where you're so inundated with all the backstory and all that stuff, where you're looking at everything and you're like, all right, we've got to cut out either the Guardians of the Galaxy, or we're going to have to cut out the Black Panther, because there's just too many pieces to telling this Avengers story. Or maybe you say, you know what, the Black Panther plays too big a role, which one of the Avengers are we going to cut out?
Well, I think they did. They ended up cutting out Captain Marvel.
Yeah, well,
she just shows up and she goes, "Hey, sorry."
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They didn't have enough room in the movie for me.
Yeah, I've been busy.
But I'm here now. Here's Thanos. Here's his ship.
Right, but you have to make those sorts of decisions.
Yeah.
Right, and in the story of David, it's one that has so much biblical importance, but also so much historical importance, that you don't want to leave out somebody that is going to not just keep readers engaged, but specifically kids engaged, right? Like David's got a bunch of mighty men and telling their stories. One guy like stood on a bridge.
It's like
and
King
took
Arthur's court, or
yeah,
the
exactly.
Avengers. Or,
well, I mean, they were part of the, if you look at it in, in historical terms and context, like part of the inspiration for King Arthur's court was David's mighty men. And if you look at the way that the mythology around the Arthurian court is, they do a lot of really similar feats to King David's mighty men. Now, with the exception being
they didn't have Sir Robin.
Well, who personally wet himself at the Battle of Baden Hill. Yeah. They didn't have Monty Python's version of Sir Robin, that's for sure. Yeah. But with the exception of Sir Gawain, who was told in a way that he was kind of the antithesis of David, that whenever David was tempted, that he fell into it, and yet when Sir Gawain was tempted, he resisted every time. There are these beautiful...
Talking about Bathsheba.
Yes, yeah. And the nobleman's wife in Sir Gawain. But there's these beautiful hints at how historically important those stories are. And if you skip over things like the Mighty Men, then you're really missing some of the very cool, very rich parts of the story that also allow you a lot of storytelling liberty. Because we don't know how all of those things happen, but I do know that if I saw a couple of panels where, you know, like this is one of David's mighty men. And even if it's 3 panels, this is his name, this is what he did. And here's, you know, a picture of him fighting off 200 guys on a wooden bridge that's suspended over a great chasm with, you know, a pole sword. It's like, yeah, those are going to be 3 of my favorite panels in the comic book. And even if you handle all of them like that, like it's still, that's not only is it is an amazing stuff that continues to further the story, but it's attention grabbing and it's fascinating and stuff that you could have a lot of fun with.
If you were going to scotch tape 3 panels to your office, what would it be? We already got one.
Oh man. Yeah. So it would definitely be that one. I think the second would be Jonathan, you know, the story of Jonathan going
with
up
the Philistines,
yeah.
wiping out the Philistines.
Yep. And then I think the last one, we're talking about the entire story of David, right? The last one I think would be the panel of Uriah dying. And the reason why that would be the last one is because like the first one is really fun. The second one is a great part of the story with Jonathan. It has to do with somebody who outside of Jesus, David, and Moses might be my favorite biblical character. But the panel of Uriah dying, when everybody would have to pull back and let him be killed, right, would to me just be like a wonderful reminder of like what our sin does. And one of the things that's so interesting about that whole thing is like the guy that David tells to pull back is the very guy that he tells Solomon, get him out of your court because he's not a good man. Like he carried out all of David's dirty work. Like he wasn't one of his assassins or one of the mighty men. No, this guy was somebody that David went to whenever he knew that bad things needed to happen, because this guy was ruthless and he was conscienceless. And he specifically tells Solomon in 1 Kings, he's like, you need to get rid of him because he's not good and won't be good for you. And like that reminder, that panel, I think of Uriah, you know, dead on the battlefield after something he didn't do and didn't deserve happened to him, would just be a very humbling reminder of like, here's some awesome stuff. Here's this great loyalty and friendship, but remember like what your own sin can cause for other people. So I think that would be my third panel.
Very thoughtful.
No, thank you. I try to be.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you guys for watching another episode of The Reverend and the Reprobate. You guys make sure and slap that like button and subscribe. If you slap, it'll give you power over 9,000. Yeah, it'll combine it with the Spirit Stone. We've had a ton of fun talking to these guys, and one of the things that makes our show so great is you, as our listeners and viewers, supporting not just phenomenal works that our guests do, but also really great art. So make sure that you check out the links in the show notes. We always tell you guys to do that, but especially with something like this that is not just really important and really cool, but also really fun, and something that you can share with your kids or your grandkids or your kids' friends in a way that can help them to be able to learn about biblical truth and help you have a foot in the door to present the gospel to them. So make sure that you check out all the links in the show notes. Dan, great job as always.
Yeah.
Y'all have good give, and we'll see you next week.
This is Balin Hollingsworth, and this is why you should never, ever listen to the Reverend and the Reprobate podcast. They make fun of your beard.
Can I do Donald Duck?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Donald Duck would be great.
Okay. Just don't make fun of me, okay? Just
not a chance.
I'm just out of curiosity. Do you do a good Donald Duck impression, or is this just...
Does it matter?
No. That's why I said out of curiosity.
It doesn't understand, but what I'm trying to say is just you don't have to watch this because it makes me angry.